Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I hope you had a great day. Let's take a look at some of the best Screw HOA stories.
The first story is called Farmer vs Homeowners Association. I live in a rural area on a family farm. The farm next to ours was sold to a developer who built a bunch of mini mansions that have a homeowners association. Now, the mini mansions back up to my family farm. I get letters every week from the homeowners association complaining about the tractor sitting in the field at the front of my property where it can be seen from the street. We're working that field and the tractor is necessary. I've had them complain about my barns, outbuildings, the sound of the large tractor when I'm seeding. Once my grandfather saw some people he didn't recognize checking out the barn, so he went out with his double barrel to see what they were up to. They were inspectors from the association who declared their right to inspect the building to make sure it met their rules. My grandfather is not politically correct and I was pleased he restrained himself from using his buckshot to register his opinion of trespassers. And yes, our property is fenced and posted. I was informed by them that they were going to fine me $1,000 a day until the offending striations and machinery were removed. I informed them that I and my property are not part of the homeowner association, and if their inspectors set foot on my property again, I would have them arrested or let my grandfather loose. They went nuts and called the county sheriff's office, but having lived here for generations I knew the sheriff. He came out and asked me what was going on and I told him. He also visited the homeowners association and heard their demands that he take immediate action to protect their inspectors. They were less than happy when he informed them that since my property is posted and fenced, I was well within my rights to not allow them on my land. He also informed them that as I am not a member of the association, I have no requirement to allow them on my land, and if he gets another call, he will arrest the inspectors for criminal trespass. I have since been sent a letter from their lawyer, telling me to cease and desist all operations until they get a court date because they are suing me for damaging the value of their property. I forwarded it to my lawyer who, after he was done laughing, was amazed. First, because a court has to issue a cease and desist order, and secondly, we've been here farming for 4 generations. I have spoken with the board and told them to leave us alone or we'll be more than happy to play our lawyer is better than their lawyer. I was informed that the developer of their property assured them I'd be selling my land for development to an organization like his. They were more than a little surprised when I told them that we're currently training the 5th generation to take over and we have no intention of selling our farm, period. Seems the developer left them with the impression that I was selling my property to be developed like my neighbors had been, only to make his money and run. The next story is called Getting the Whole Association Banned from Ordering Pizza. I did not live in this association, but I did live down the street. We're gonna set the Wayback Machine to circa 2000 on this one. Gas is cheap, cell phones were small, and my Ford Escort got amazing gas mileage. As the now ex-wife and I were struggling with our bills, she decided that the easiest thing for her was for me to get a second job to try to catch up and then get something into savings. Having seen the sign in the window of the local pizza shop that was advertising $12 to $16 an hour for drivers, which was a lie, she badgered me into applying. Fast forward a couple of months, and I have settled into my mind-numbing routine of working 60 to 70 hours a week at 2 jobs. On this particular day, I was scheduled to work on Saturday, which was hit or miss for tips. You see, our delivery area was very nouveau riche, combined with scattered groups of Florida rednecks. You would have a gated community with mansions and BMWs right next to a trailer park. Oddly enough, the smaller the house and cheaper the car, the bigger the tip, which factors into the story. On this particular Saturday, a local homeowners association was throwing a pizza party for the residents. I think they were celebrating the last house being sold or moving the association from the developer to the board, or something. Anyway, they ordered a ton of pizza. So much so that the manager had scheduled extra kitchen staff and had them show up an hour early just for this one order. He even gave them a discount on the pizza, since they ordered so much. There were so many pies that it took me and another driver 2 trips apiece to deliver it all. When we got the last boxes of pizza delivered, the manager wrote a check for the total, a couple $100, and change rounded up to the next dollar for our tip. So, I left and went back to the store. The manager asked me how much of a tip I got, to which I replied 87 cents. He didn't believe me, so I showed him the check. He then asked me if I was messing with him, and if they had given me a cash tip. I said, no, and he went off. He walked over to the phone, called the manager of the association, cussed her out for not tipping his drivers, after he had discounted the order and scheduled extra staff just for her order, and told her that he was entering that entire subdivision into the computer as do not deliver. He then hung up, opened the cash register, and gave each of us a $20 bill for a tip. To this day, I have no idea if any of the residents were ever able to order from that store. The third story is called How to Deal with HOAs. I bought a house in a then small town in Texas back in 2007. I was born and raised in the Central Texas Hill Country, and throughout my entire childhood, there had never been any homeowner associations. Some of the rich neighborhoods had neighborhood associations, which are far different than homeowner associations. I went off to join the military in 2001, and when I came back in 2006, they were everywhere. Even the neighborhood where I grew up now had one. My parents had moved to a new neighborhood, and my father had been constantly fighting with his. Things like he built a tool shed in his own backyard without permission, and he parked his car in his driveway instead of his garage, that kind of stuff. So, I'm seeing his constant struggle, and being raised in a culture where your property was your property and no one else's business, I wanted no part of this. Anyway, it's now 2007, and I'm home from the military and looking to buy a house. My number one priority is no homeowner associations. After a couple of months, I find a home in a neighborhood without one. It surprised me because it was a fairly new neighborhood, and it was also a relatively small neighborhood. It definitely looked like it would have one, but it didn't. So I move in, love the place, and proceed to go about my life. One day I'm talking to my neighbor about homeowner associations. I mention how one of the main reasons I bought that house was that it had no homeowners association. My neighbor, who just so happened to be one of the first people to move to the neighborhood, tells me we had one of those when they first started building this place. I was surprised and asked him what happened to it. He says, back when there were still only about 20 or so homes built, there were 2 people who lived in the neighborhood that ran it. Well, they were just awful people, and they were constantly harassing the other neighbors about the grass being too high and trash cans being visible and silly stuff like that. So some of the other neighbors and I looked up the bylaws and realized that we could hold an election to replace the council, and that's what we did. I became president of the association, and a couple of other neighbors were council members. Once we were in charge, we just voted to dissolve it, so now we don't have one. The next story is called Getting Rid of the Association's President. I just turned 30. I have a good job, spend my money wisely, save and invest. I grew up dirt poor and had nothing handed to me in life. In my late 20s, the software company I had been at went public, and I cashed out and moved back home to Florida. With nothing to do, I started investing in rental properties with a good friend of mine. This started about a year ago with the president of a homeowners association where I purchased 2 condos. This is a man in his late 60s, and he thinks he is the second coming of Jesus. From the get-go, he made comments about being young and buying houses, why my parents weren't co-signing, and that it must be nice to have a trust fund. Both properties had existing tenants, one still there, one left. My business model has been to completely remodel every property between tenants to get the maximum rental income. Construction was not good, literally everything was a problem, you name it. The association's president tried to meddle his way in. I submitted 6 rental applications, all got denied. I was never given a reason, but the board was happy to cash my application fees. I got my company's attorney involved. It took 6 months and many wasted days in a courtroom, but we finally got the books. I had a family friend go through them and found some inconsistencies. I'll save the long story, but after many thousands of dollars and hundreds of wasted hours, we found out that this idiot and his 2 crony board members were stealing from the bank account. He was writing fake invoices to his own company. My magician attorney was able to get text logs of them discussing blocking my applications. Mainly, they wanted me to dump the property so they could buy it. We won a sizable judgment against him personally, and the association's insurance subrogated him. Today, he put his house up for sale. The house he had been living in for 30 years. To throw salt on the wound, I did put in an offer for 65% of what he's asking, though I doubt I'll get a response. And we offered to settle for a fraction months ago. We even were willing to include a non-disclosure. But the idiot told us to pound sand at every turn. The last story is called This Lawyer Probably Lost His Job for It. This story was shared with me years ago by a late family friend. He was an avid ham radio operator and had numerous antennas scattered around both his front and backyards. His subdivision was older construction and did not have an association, so there were no issues with this. However, his lot backed up to another subdivision that was newer and did have one. You can probably see where this is going. One day, he gets a knock on his door from one of these Karen types. She had just bought the house behind him, and needless to say, she was not a fan of all his antennas. She starts rattling off all these supposed rules he's violating, along with the typical "they're a safety hazard, eyesore, lowering my property value, hurting my feelings" arguments. He tried to politely explain that his house was in a different subdivision and was not part of their association, but she was having none of it. After a few weeks and a few more interactions that went just like the first one, he got a threatening form letter in the mail from the HOA's law firm. Coincidentally, his lawyer was a partner in that same firm. One phone call got that line of communication shut down instantly. With that defeat, Karen finally gave up and he was able to go back to living in peace. Karen moved about a year later. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comments section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.